You're a risk, Grant. You're a risk to yourself and everyone around you.
It was dark, mate. Anyone could have made the same mistake. It's what I wrote in my report. Grant! They never said it would be like this.
Okay, we're rolling. Stand by, Roberto. Right. And action.
I'm Jeff Lang, the actor, but I'm also a serving police officer. Whilst we couldn't possibly talk about every situation a member faces, the story you've just seen is a sample of what can be experienced by officers on any given day. But what is important is that we do start talking. During the making of this film, I was fortunate enough to meet with several officers from around Australia to share our stories and begin the conversation.
If we don't spread the word to like the younger ones, they need to look for the signs. They need to know what the signs are.
Sometimes it's hard though. I think a bit about mine when I look back on it, and I guess we're all in the same situation where you reflect and press rewind in your mind and see what the signs were. But from my experience, that bucket, it just gets full, it just keeps going and going, and the water just keeps pouring in it. And it's not until it overflows and you sit back, you actually realise that, wow, there were little signs, but they're hard to see sometimes. They're not obvious.
People that haven't been through it don't really know what those signs are. We've been through it, we've lived it, we've done it, we've taken the medications, and we're the ones that need to teach, the guys that we're working with, what we need to look out for. If it doesn't come from us, like you said, they're not going to listen to people who have no working knowledge of what we've been through and what we do from day to day and how it affects us.
And the classic example is just recently I went to a crash scene where one of our young constables actually had to go, and a 3-year-old little girl passed away. She got run over and he had to go to the hospital to be with the family. The thing was he'd never seen a young girl die, and he was literally only in the job 4 months. When we had the good debrief at the end of that, which my boss put on coffee, which was really good, and we all sat round, having that experience of going through myself what I went through, I could actually tell the young guy and say to him, hey, look, yeah, you're going to, for the next month or two, you probably are going to feel a bit, crappy. You might have some nightmares, you may have some issues, it may affect you, but if you still feel that way in 3-4 months, then there's probably going to be an issue. And that was one of the hardest things with myself, that I waited 3 years to get help, and that's why I ended up where I was. And when I saw the psychiatrist, police psychiatrist, straight afterwards, a psychologist, sorry, and she said to me, if you're still feeling this way in a year, there's a problem. However, putting on the big face and being, that whole, and more so male as well, not wanting to admit it, it took me 3 years, and if it wasn't for my wife pushing me, I'd probably still be in a bad place. So it's good that I can share that, as you said, with the other guys.
You said that signs, though, you know the signs, so if there are other people aren't around that can't pick up on those signs, then how was somebody placed in that situation?
Well, that's right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it starts off with an education process, and I guess that education process is sort of going to start within ourselves, amongst our own ranks. Without trying to bag management or anything, I mean, they're not the ones that are going to be looking out for those signs. It's someone that's been through it knows what to look for.
So you're saying that if the stigma's gone, then, and I start to feel that myself, then I won't have a problem coming forward with it? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, half the problem, and I don't know what you guys think, but half the problem revolves around that stigma. It's not just the signs, it's also, it's not just the signs, it's also about identifying those things within yourself and wanting to come out.
Is that the education we want to deal with the fellow police officers, or is it education of the family that has the closest dealings with these people, can identify stuff earlier on?
Yeah, good point, Nathan.
It has to be everywhere. Our lives are everything, you can't just segment.
And that's where we should bring in the family of these police officers in the training phase and let them know that obviously the possibilities of what's going to happen to them, and obviously look out for warning signs, and obviously they're going to have the greater knowledge. If you're a manager, which I have 100 police officers underneath me. It's hard to know everything that's going on with every officer. But however, I have sergeants that obviously manage these people, that deal with these people on a day in, day out, and you have to have that conversation with them to identify and you to deal with the problems as before it gets bigger than Ben-Hur, as we know. That's the biggest problem. If we don't start that early conversation, and we don't start that early conversation with their family, you're hopeless from the start.
But you've been through it, big fella. How many other managers would do that with their...
Hardly ever, and that's the biggest problem we've got.
So you've been through it, so you've got the experience here. They don't have the experience.
I've taken the stigma, I've run with the stigma, I've dealt with whatever stigma they wanted to give to me. And being 6'6", whatever it is, and tall and bulletproof, so you think when you walk around, as we all do, as police officers, when it hits you, the effect it has on the other people in the station as well. And they go, and they really do shit themselves and go, we are vulnerable. We are all very vulnerable. And that's the biggest, scariest thing for the majority of the people there.
But I think it's still pretty hard unless you have like a good friend who's a colleague, or like myself being through it, or yourself being through it, a boss or whoever. Until you've actually been through it yourself, you can't really get an understanding of it too much. I mean, you can hear the training, and that's why I think, like with myself, I've been so open about it within my workplace, and you know, telling the guys what I've gone through and stuff like that. So it does break that stigma. So it is out there. That conversation is put out there. But unless you actually go for it yourself, I think it is pretty hard to train someone to know what we're going through. But the big thing is, as you said, is we need to spread the word. We need to get this out there so that, you know, I had a superintendent when I got injured, and if it wasn't for him, as I said, he had gone through the same thing probably like you did. He had actually gone through an incident himself, and the day after he met me, because I was going up to my health and welfare, and he bought me a coffee, but because my teeth were damaged, he said it's going to be a cheap lunch because I couldn't eat. But he supported me the entire time. Yeah. And, you know, he would ask me how I'm going and making sure that I was looked after. You know, probably more so than any other support. I mean, my immediate boss came and saw me, but because he had gone through it himself, he knew exactly what I was going through, and he gave me some great advice. And I think that's where, you know, we can give these officers that advice. But as you said, it needs to be not just at our level, but it needs to be through all ranks. It does.
And before you get help, there's that one big word, stigma. And I actually experienced 3 different things with that. One was you're weak. And this was somebody who, to his credit, opened up to me, who was on the periphery of the scene, who said, I thought you were weak for taking that 20 months off when they were reconstructing my mouth. To his credit, so that was one, you're just weak. The other one is, you're a shirker, you're on holidays. Anybody who has had long-term sick leave, there's only so many books, there's only so many movies, there's so many crossword puzzles. It gets shit boring very, very quick. And the other one is, it's a get-rich-quick scheme. And it's so easy to go to a professional and actually say, oh, yes, I'm having dreams, it's terrible. And what else does PTS people suffer? What have I read? There was the dreams, the depression, that's right. I'm suicidal as well. I tell you what, I don't think the best actor in the world could go through the process and speak these stories time and again. We're all investigators. Doesn't matter if you're general duties or, you keep telling stories, you'll actually slip up. And that's what happens.
Why is there stigma? Why don't people believe in it?
I remember out running, everything's come flooding back, and I've had these visions of the bonnet of the police vehicle where I've poured blood from my mouth all over it, reappearing, and I could not get them out of my mind. And it was like seeing a motion picture in front of me. And unless I'd experienced it, I would not have believed it. And so I think that's part of the difficulty. So I'm not making this up. And each one of you here sort of saying, well, we're all from different jurisdictions and we've had these experiences and this is what's occurred. It's like, no, this is not some conspiracy theory to get a payout, because we're all still in the job. This is just what it's like after those events. So ignorance, I think, is a big part of it. Because I've heard senior officers say, how can you have a panic attack? You're sitting in a coffee room and looking at me, nothing what's gone on with me, And you've had these senior officers say this, and I just thought, my God, you know, there's no way that I could take my problems to them, and God help the junior officers under them.
Has some of that stigma come in since the introduction of medicine, perhaps, because you know you get diagnosed medicine? So I'm interested, like, how have you guys gone when they've told you you're going to need medication?
Medication's great. Oh, it's great.
And that's what I was saying before, and that's when you talk about your ignorance and stuff like that. Like I said earlier on, you know, I had one senior officer that actually said, you know, I don't want to work with this guy because he's taking medication he has for 2 years. And that's when I turned around to him and said, well, I've been taking it twice as long as that. But you've just disclosed that to me, and you've known me for years, and you know how I operate. So and I think part of that stigma, or part of the issue, is that when we talk about mental illness within the community, people instantly think of worst case scenario, someone that is literally, you know, having issues, and that is, you know, not, how can you put it, that is, you know, you speak to them like we deal with them all the time, that they're literally having an episode and you can't deal with them. Where it's PTSD, and like, not to say that we don't get bad, but as I said, I can go to work and I'm fine. I can operate, I can do my job, I can think clearly. When I get home, and like you said, when you're tired and you drop that shield, your shield around you, and it affects you, look, yeah, I suffer with PTSD, I suffer with depression, I suffer with these issues, and you know, I tell people at work now because I want them to know. I want them to know that stigma and that thing about mental illness, this is what it encompasses. It's not the fact that, you know, I'm putting a alpha hat on my head and running around, and you know, I'm going to bark at the moon, and I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to be.
You do that too.
Yeah, I do actually. And that's well, that's it. But I mean, the thing is that I'm not going to be a danger for that person. So if I was to go on patrol with Nathan, he would know that I can still do my job. I'm not going to let him down. I'm not going to let the members of the public down. And you know, even though we're still bad, and you know, even those knockers, that the people that will actually say, hey, look, I don't like police or whatever, as soon as they call, I'm the first one that will still go and help them. Do you know what I mean? Anyone that badmouths police, look, if they ring us, I will be there. But what they don't understand, or what to me it is that when we talk about mental illness, there's still that, they don't realise that there's different realms of mental illness. So obviously there's people that have serious conditions when they can't operate and they are a danger to themselves. And not to say, like with your instance, Mel, that you can get that bad. However, you know, it's that stigmatism. As soon as you hear of mental illness, you go to worst case scenario.
Yeah,
so I think that's part of the stigma is
within
within our workplace, or my workplace, is that as soon as someone hears that, it's like, okay, you know, you're crazy and you shouldn't be working with me, where I'm not crazy. You know, I still think I'm
a to challenge that stigma as well.
That's it.
It's
exactly right.
Shouldn't exist. I suppose I've got a question, and maybe we can just do it by a show of hands. Who is still in the job? Well, there you go. There's a shining example of a whole bunch of people who have been through all sorts of mental health injuries and still going.
The biggest thing that I experienced on the mental health side of things was people did not know what to say. Yep. And the simple thing that I learned, because I've had colleagues go through things that were outside my realm of understanding. And so I would pick up the phone and chat. And when they understand, like, would you like to have a face-to-face? You know, picking up the phone's easy. Having a face-to-face is great. And the number one thing I learned, and I've said to millions of people, is like, hey, it's Greenie, how you going? By the way, look, I don't understand what you've been through, and I really don't know what to say, but I just want you to know that I care, and I'd like to have a chat with you. And you may not feel up to it today, but if you do, you know, I'd love to have a coffee with you, or next week. Now, that's simple words. I do not know what to say, but I care.
You almost have to tell people what to say, because a lot of people don't want to know because they're weak and they're horrible. A lot of people don't want to get involved because they worry that they're going to say the wrong thing. And so it's almost like that what I get my depressed patient to say is, today, to their friends, today I would like you to take me out to go and buy some shoes, or break some windows, or cut some rocks, whatever. And don't spend too much time talking, because that is hard for the depressed person.
But that's where we need to put it on the table. We
Lots
do.
of
We need
people
to
think it's contagious.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, well, that's the other thing.
Am I going to get it too?
Who was talking about ignorance?
It is around here.
Crazy,
But the biggest thing is, though, is to put it on the table. Because if I put it on the table and I say to you, hey, look, I do have this issue, I do have PTSD, I am going through this, it then takes the burden off of them to go, okay, he's opened it up. I don't have to tread on, eggshells. I can now talk to him about it. Okay, how are you going? And there was one thing, and you say about face-to-face. One of my colleagues by the name of John, he, as I said, I just work with him occasionally and all that sort of stuff. Every time I had an operation or whatever, and he knew, because he'd just find out how I was going, he would send me a text saying, mate, I'm with you, good luck, anything you need, let me know. And you know, that little, just that text message to know that someone cared before I went in for an operation or whatever, even though my family cared, from that one colleague that, like, look, if that guy rang me up tomorrow and said, hey, look, I need you to come over here and move 500 bricks, or I need you to paint I'd do it for him, because that guy was there for me at my lowest time, and that one little text message meant so much to me, you know, and it's those little things, but again, we need to be able to put that on the table for the people and say, hey, look, this is what I'm going through. And if we don't, sometimes how do you know unless you're told? And that's what I said. I did that. I wouldn't tell people how bad I was. So in one way, I can't blame them for not being there for me.
These are pretty kind of really end stage kind of places to be. But what I was learning from you guys before is that if we're looking out early on, it's people who aren't sleeping properly, their wives are cranky or they're cranky with their wives, they're avoiding stuff, and sometimes the avoidance is working too hard, trying to bury themselves in work, and the physical injuries. But what's going to trigger these states of mind? What are the top 3 worst things that you guys, recall?
I'll say, like, what sticks in my mind is like, okay, we've all been through some fairly critical incidents, which has brought on, our PTSD and our mental health. And from what I can tell, everyone's come across the other side, and I think it's fantastic that we've all been so strong and resilient to get back into the game.
Oh, it's amazing.
But I think what we need to remember also is that it's not just that one incident.
It's a stack.
We spoke about the bucket being full. Every day as police officers, we'll go to a crash scene. Detectives will go to murders, we'll do autopsies, we have to deal with rapes, we deal with victims. We'll deal with, I'm not crying because of the job, I'm crying because of the smoke, so I apologise.
Pussy!
Yeah.
Got your back, brother.
So it's not just...
into this job?
it's not just about that one incident. It's about a culmination of things, and I think that's one of the things we need to remember. And we talk about debriefs and things like that from our day-to-day job. And that occurs in-house. That occurs with your colleagues. That occurs after work. You might go for a drink. You might do whatever with your mates. To get over that, there's nothing else really that will help you get over the stresses of that day, the stresses that are going to culminate into that bucket being full.
It's that teamwork?
It's
hanging out.
It's the teamwork, but there needs to be more than that, and there needs to be that identification. So yeah, we've all been through, all of us here have been through that 1 or 2 major incidents in our lives that have changed us and made us the way that we are. But we need to remember that just being a police officer, dealing with the everyday stresses of dealing with that angry man, dealing with that angry woman, the DV jobs we go to, it all builds up. And I think that's something that people need to realise and understand, that we're not robots, we've got feelings, we do bleed, like you said before, and we need those coping mechanisms from day dot in the academy.
We've all travelled. And we've been to the police jurisdictions from Africa to Europe to in Southeast Asia. We're all the same. People are the same the world over. It doesn't matter the language, it doesn't matter the culture. it's domestic, it's drugs, it's violence, it's the same, you know, people react the same.
People just need to talk. That's, I mean, you know, if there's one message we need to get across, which I think is the one point, if you've got a problem, talk.
Seek some help.
And you know what? That's the most important thing that I say for tonight. If we can start communication and people talking within the community, within the police services, throughout the country, we've achieved so much because, like you said before, we haven't always got it right. It was always stigmatised. We had those issues, but now we're here. We're talking openly about it. So for me, we've come such a long way. And if we can continue that message, and if we cause, you know, 2 or 3 coppers or 2 or 3 people, members of the community, to actually have a conversation and someone to recognise that someone's not going through it, and because of that, that person doesn't take their own life. If it's one person, we say, because of what we've done tonight, we've achieved our goal.
We've achieved something. That's right.